So we are in Matthew chapter 22 today. We have Jesus is in Jerusalem now. Last couple of weeks we've been talking about him coming into Jerusalem, and we talked about all of him coming in. It looks like Judas Maccabeus, and everything, all the pomp and circumstance. It looks like Hanukkah, and then he come, and then they all want him to be, a king. These big kings, they all want Jesus to be this big king. But then now we see this kind of different. Like it's not different, but we're seeing the point of the spear getting much pointier, a lot sharper, as he's focusing in on the Jewish elite over him. So all of these all the religious leaders, all these people over there that they've been using God's people. They've been using them for their own ends and all these things, and that he's almost like confronting some, like, I don't know, institutional pride, maybe you could call it. That's kind of what the fig tree is all about, is that, God meant for Israel to be a blessing to the entire world, and yet there's no fruit there, right? There's no fruit on the tree, and so there's all these parables that are kind of about that. The last one we read is about the what's it called, the vineyard owner, and he's got these tenants who are not taking care of it, and he's like, well, I'll finally send my son and they'll respect him. And then they kill his own son, and that gets us to where Jesus says, the stone that the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. This is the Lord's doing, and it's marvelous in our eyes. And this was obviously shot at the Pharisees and those religious leaders, and they were not happy about it. But they couldn't do anything about it because they feared the people. And so we see more stuff that is like that. So basically what we do, this is my mom, and for those who didn't meet her, that was my dad earlier. Apparently, I probably hit the button on the remote.
Wait, let's just own the fact that he recognized that he didn't shut it when he
that's good. That's good. That's good. Admirable.
I didn't recognize that we didn't shut it.
By the way, hi Pam. It's good to see you. Piper's coming in. Coming in right now. We'll let Piper get in. Wait, all that. Hi Piper. You always come in muted, but it's good seeing you. Hopefully you've been able to walk around so far. Right, like that's, and all that. Piper had a big hip surgery, and so but all right. So we are in chapter 2 of Matthew. So we'll read like 22 chapter 20. We'll read through chapter 22 here, and then we'll talk about it. So.
And Jesus answered and spoke to them again by parables.
The kingdom of heaven is like a certain king who arranged a marriage for his son and sent out his servants to call those who were invited to the wedding, and they were not willing to come. Again, he sent out other servants, saying, "Tell those who are invited, 'See, I have prepared my dinner, my oxen and fatted cattle are killed, and all things are ready. Come to the wedding.' But they made light of it and went their ways, one to his own farm, another to his business, and the rest seized his servants, treated them spitefully, and killed them. But when the king heard about it, he was furious, and he sent out his armies, destroyed those murderers, and burned up their city. Then he said to his servants, 'The wedding is ready, but those who were invited were not worthy. Therefore, go into the highways, and as many as you find, invite to the wedding. So those servants went out into the highways and gathered together all whom they found, both bad and good, and the wedding hall was filled with guests. But when the king came in to see the guests, he saw a man there who did not have on a wedding garment. So he said to him, "Friend, how did you come in here without a wedding garment?" And he was speechless. Then the king said to the servants, "Bind him hand and foot, take him away and cast him into outer darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen."
Then the Pharisees went and plotted how they might entangle him in his talk. And they sent to him their disciples with the Herodians.
Teacher, we know that you are true and teach the way of God in truth, nor do you care about anyone, for you do not regard the person of men. Tell us, therefore, what do you think? Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not?
But Jesus perceived their wickedness.
"Why do you test me, you hypocrites? Show me the tax money."
So they brought him a denarius.
"Whose image and inscription is this?"
Caesar's.
"Render, therefore, to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's."
When they had heard these words, they marveled, and left him, and went their way. The same day, the Sadducees, who say there is no resurrection, came to him.
"Teacher, Moses said that if a man dies, having no children, his brother shall marry his wife and raise up offspring for his brother. Now, there were with us 7 brothers. The first died after he had married, and having no offspring left his wife to his brother. Likewise the second also, and the third, even to the 7th. Last of all, the woman died also. Therefore, in the resurrection, whose wife of the 7 will she be? For they all had her."
"You are mistaken, not knowing the Scriptures nor the power of God. For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels of God in heaven. But concerning the resurrection of the dead, have you not read what was spoken to you by God, saying, 'I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob'? God is not the God of the dead, but of the living."
And when the multitudes heard this, they were astonished at his teaching. But when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together. Then one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question, testing him.
"Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law?"
"You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophets."
While the Pharisees were gathered together, Jesus asked them,
"What do you think about the Christ? Whose son is he?"
The son of David.
"How then does David in the Spirit call him Lord, saying, 'The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand, till I make your enemies your footstool'? If David then calls him Lord, how is he his son?"
And no one was able to answer him a word, nor from that day on did anyone dare question him anymore.
There's Lee. Okay. All right. So that's the reading. Lee is now like in so hi Lee. The so chapter 22, we have some stuff that I feel like gets read a lot near the end of that. But this first story in 22, I don't think is really rendered too much. Like on at least I haven't rendered it all that much. And yeah, this wedding. good story. There's another wedding feast we talked to, and I think it's kind of weird. So what stood out to you?
The Son,
The son, yeah,
the apostles, the disciples, what occurred to them when he attempted to bring people in,
okay,
and the king resorting to bring everybody.
yeah,
The only piece I don't understand is the killing of the person who did not wear wedding garments.
yeah. Like that's weird. That's weird.
Mm-hmm.
So let's yeah. So what else?
Okay.
What else does someone think? What's going on here?
The wedding garments, and I don't know if I'm on the right track here or not, but would that not represent being clothed in Christ? And the one that didn't have the wedding garments on weren't a part of salvation?
Well, it's like, why are they there? Like, I think is what I think is kind of some of what is going on is why are they at this wedding feast without the celebration garments on? So I think that's some of what you're talking about with that clothing.
Satisfied with was an insult to the
Mm,
people that they didn't have this wedding garment.
yeah. So, and I think we're getting into something it's not our culture, like having some of this on.
Well, what it brings to my mind is those who had their oil in their lamps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that
They were ready, they were prepared, they were waiting. And I mean, here's someone, I mean, God's salvation is for all of us.
mm-hmm.
You know, some choose not to live in it.
So, and I see a bunch of Old Testament stuff in here. You know, he's like, he goes out and he arranges this marriage for his son, and everyone that he invites is like, I got better things to do along with that. And I got this going on, I got that going on, and then he's like, no, but tell him like listen, I killed a fattened calf. I've got the name brand Chex Mix. You know, I got all the chips and the dips and all these things. These are jokes from previous sermons, and so the yeah, they never go away. And I got name brand Chex Mix for my birthday this year.
They made us pressure.
And so he's like, you know, the cat and the fatted calf are killed and like all this stuff. So tell them to come to the wedding, and they're like, like what? Is there any different language there in other translations? I feel like the King James that we're using for our dramatized version is coloring this.
Oh, the NIV, of course, says slaves, not servants.
Okay, so he uses slaves. All right, yeah, that's
And the milk.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
you know, I see this in verse 3. Invited to the wedding feast. I mean, you know, we're all invited, but they were unwilling to come.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, God, we so willingly settle for good when God wants to give us best.
Mm-hmm.
And here's God offering best to these people, and they're unwilling.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing I'm hearing all like how they treated the prophets, how they treated, you know, because you remember this is straight off of the Pharisees. Like you can tell that he's talking to them, you know, and they are using people up. They're using and abusing people up, and they are that all these things. Like he has invited all of his people, but now they make a light of it. They don't want to come. And I think this is also talking about us today in a certain way. Yeah.
There's also, I mean, he's not extending just one invitation here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's giving an opportunity and then giving another opportunity. And
I think you really see it in verse 5. It says they made a light of it, and then verse 6 it says, and the rest seized his servants, treated them spitefully, and killed them. Like that's and Didn't we already read it in where Jesus, I can't remember if that's here or if it's coming, where Jesus said, you guys had the prophets came to you, or something about like if there was another prophet, you would have just killed that prophet too. Something along those lines.
But isn't verse 5 us today? I mean, not specifically us, but mankind today, but they paid no attention and went their own way.
Well,
that reminds me of Judges too. They did what was right in their own eyes.
Well, and I think it has to do with back then, and once we get it back then, I think we can see it today. Like it's like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, like that we're like that, doing what is right in our own eyes, like making light of all these things, and then we end up killing the servants of God to do what we want, type of thing, like that's and so, but I think that's definitely resembling other language that Jesus said about the prophets to the Pharisees, that if there was another prophet, you just kill him too. And you're also getting some maybe crucifixion notes coming forward. I mean, we are in Jerusalem now. We're going straight to the cross. And so and then the king heard about it and was furious at all of this, and he's like, well, if they're not going to come, invite all the people who aren't worth it. And that is that's kind of wild.
That sucks.
Yeah, like that's so suddenly the Gentiles enter the room, like those dirty Gentiles, all
Nasty Samaritan.
Yeah, the nasty Samaritans, right? Like that's like he invites all of them. He's like, invite them to my wedding feast, and apparently they all come. He's like, go on the highways and gather all the people that are the people that are driving by, tell them there's a big party like going on here, and all these things. These people here that were supposed to be in the party have removed themselves from the party. I think this is a key distinction, like that's, and then you have, he's like, I want the wedding hall to be filled with guests, and so the party's going on, and then someone's there, and this is such a weird, I really don't know what to do, but we already kind of talked about it, but the wedding garment, like that's, and he's like, why are you without a wedding garment? And he didn't have anything to say. He's speechless. Like did anyone want to add anything to that wedding garment? Because it's all of a sudden you have this talk, and this is where, before we say anything about it, this I think is a good example of, I don't care where you are on the spectrum of thought, whether you're all the way on this side or all the way on this side, like the Gospels will step on your toes. Right. And I think he does a good job of stepping on toes even in this one story. Like he's like, everybody, like everybody come, everyone come. And then there's someone who isn't quite prepared enough. And he's like, I'm gonna cast you into outer darkness with his weeping and gnashing of teeth. Like that's, I don't know. Does anyone have any thoughts about this?
When I was a young person, I kind of pictured this guy coming in without a coat and tie and being told, you can't come in like this. And I was thinking, this guy can't afford a wedding gown and everybody's supposed to be part of the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah.
What's the matter? Why, he doesn't have a tie? Give him a tie.
Yeah.
I think this ties in with Revelation, where we are given robes, white linen, and I mean, this is covenant right here, where these wedding clothes that they're talking about is being clothed in Christ. And, that's an exchange of him taking our dirty rags and giving us his white linen.
Well, and also this person, he's like, why don't you have it on? Like, why didn't you dress for a wedding at Alabama here? He's just kind of, dressing in his everyday things. And I kind of wonder if we put our mind around it back then. We're around verse 12 right now. If we put our mind around it a little bit, it's like they're not participating in the wedding feast, type of, like they're not participating in it, and so they're there, but they're like, I don't approve of this. I don't know. What do you think?
It still troubles me. The terrible episode was benevolent. It still sticks in my craw. Notwithstanding your interpretation about the garment, it's almost staggering. Where did this come from?
Yeah. Like that's stepping on toes. Like it's difficult, and that's why it's like it's not participating in it, and that's kind of the, like you keep talking about the clothing of Christ, like that's being clothed in Christ, like that, and like this person, like just it isn't participating fun. They didn't bring name brand chips. They didn't bring the good dips and the chips, and
But there's only one thing that's going to keep us out of the wedding feast of the Lamb. And if he's comparing this to the kingdom of heaven, he's alluding to the wedding feast of the Lamb. And there is only one thing that's going to keep us out of that, and that is not having Christ.
Yeah, like so that's, and I understand that, but I think like when we look at where this is and when he's talking to people here, like I think that's a sign of like people are having fun and enjoying the wedding, enjoying the feast, like that's, and he's like, why aren't you doing this? So
No, I mean,
yeah.
They came to the feast because of the feast.
Yeah.
They were invited, but I don't return on the wedding.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point.
And
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm trying to get at. Why didn't you come prepared for this?
Yeah.
And in that context, it's us, though not necessarily us, but people who go to church but don't participate, people who participate, live that.
Yeah.
Even the ELCA Study Bible says there have been many explanations put out, but there's no real explanation that anybody can settle on. But for why the guy didn't have a wedding robe and why he was thrown out.
Maybe he didn't feel worthy and he wanted to be accepted with the rest of the people and join in.
I don't know. And it's weird. I mean, could be.
There's
We're all supposed to be included.
Yeah.
there's a cross reference in Revelation 17:14 to the word. I mean, I'm skipping down to verse 14 where it said, "For many are called, but few are chosen." And Revelation 17:14, "These will wage war against the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, because he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those who are with him are the called and the chosen and the faithful."
So yeah. So and that's that verse 14, and you gotta remember to stay like that. That's and look at how Matthew is organizing all this. 14 is a massively weird thing. For many are called, but few are chosen, and we have to remember where we are physically. Jesus just walked in to the epicenter of the chosen nation, right? Like that, into the epicenter of Israel, like God's chosen people. And
It's more than that. He's in the Sanctum Sanctorum. It's in the very center.
he's in Jerusalem. Like that's
within Jerusalem. He's in the temple.
yeah, like that. So he's all around here, and so like that's and so you have all these people that should be at this party, and they're just not, and you get this thing. So I think we begin getting a clearer picture if we continue going on, and so what I encourage us to do as we look and try to, like, what is this wedding garment stuff? Who is wearing that? What's happening here? Let's see what Matthew has for us in the rest of this chapter. And I think we begin to see that. I don't know, but let's go in here. So the next story is all about paying taxes to Caesar. Like, and this, remember, Matthew is not just picking out stories out of the air. He is putting all this stuff together in order to tell us the story of Jesus, right? To tell us the story of salvation. And so we go straight from that. For many are called, but few are chosen. Then the Pharisees went and they plotted how am I to entangle it. Like, so they can tell that that Jesus is talking about them. You know, like that he's got no friend. They got no friends with Jesus here. And so they're like, well, we got to get the people back on our side. And they're like, who, you know, is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar? Now, do you guys know why they would be asking this? Have you ever thought of, like, why?
Before they ask the question, they're very disingenuous.
Mm-hmm.
You can imagine thinking or saying to themselves, we will kill him with flattery, and then we'll kill him.
Yeah.
We will now, teacher, you know you're a man of integrity, and we'll embarrass him, and we'll kill him.
Yeah, they will kill him. Yeah. Because you see what they do, like, oh, we know you're amazing and all that stuff. So there's, and so what does Jesus say to them? Like, show me your money, right? And so they pull it out. They got money on them. Like that's, back then, that's a big deal. You know, a lot of the poor and all this stuff just wouldn't have money on them. You know, like that's, and so these people, it's kind of a display of wealth. You know, like that they have money on them anyway. And then what's Jesus' question that he asked them in verse 20? Whose image is on it? And there you have, like, what's actually going on is that the reason why they're saying, should we not pay taxes to Rome, is paying taxes to Caesar, is because it's a core fundamental on the, what is it, the second commandment? Is that, like, do not have any graven images? So something like that. That the Hebrew people would not have images on anything because they wouldn't have any reliefs, because they didn't want to break that commandment, and they wouldn't want to to worship this other thing. And so there was a big discussion amongst the Pharisees and the religious elites and all this stuff. And when these coins came in, it's like, should we not have this stuff? You know, like, that's because it has these images on it. So they're trying to trap Jesus in this argument that they're all having, like, oh, well, maybe we shouldn't pay our taxes, because paying taxes, then, you know, we're using this thing that has this image of Caesar's face on it. It's breaking this commandment. And so when Jesus is like, well, let me see one of the coins, and they're able to produce one right away, you know, they're like, oh, you know, like it's, he's showing them, just by them having it on them, that their argument is pointless. You know, like that's like, you're using this. You know, if we weren't able to find one, on you guys, maybe you would have a.
I love how he doesn't beat around the bush. He just goes right ahead in verse 18. You hypocrites.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. He perceived their wickedness, as it says in the King James there. And why do you test me, you hypocrites? Show me the tax money. That's great. And then he's like, render therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. So
in saying that, he's saying this coin that you value in God's kingdom, it has no value.
So is this, and I'm just thinking off the cuff, I don't know if this is correct or not, but is the Pharisees trying to trap Jesus like that and just arguing about money and the pictures on money, is that them being at the feast but not having the wedding garment, not celebrating?
Well, I would say definitely.
Like is that what's going on? Like I don't know. That's just coming to my mind as we're sitting here talking. Like that's so let's keep moving. There's a lot going on in this chapter. So then he talks to the Sadducees, and it comes right out and says something very important. It's like verse 23, the same day the Sadducees, who say that there is no resurrection, came to him and asked him. And then they go into this whole diatribe about this man, or this he's got 7 brothers, and so he dies, and they all just die after him. And the way I interpret the law of God in the Old Testament, generally speaking, which by the way is the correct way to interpret it, and yes, is that a lot of the laws were meant to protect. Like I think kosher is a great example of this. Like it really, a lot of what the Hebrew people were not allowed to eat and all that stuff are like scavengers and things like that. And it makes me think of the time that I've spent in the Bahamas with Coley's family, and there would be all these land crabs that we would get, and we would have to clean them out. We'd have to give them good food for like 7 days or something like that, and to clean them out where they would be poisonous to get to eat. So you had to, because they're scavengers, they're eating trash constantly. And and if you think about that, and it's like, oh, okay, like, well, it's one of the things. So God's law is there to protect people, and the law was like, and remember, women basically had no rights back in the day. Like that's why when you see widows in Jesus' time and before that, that's why it's so tragic, because really, if a woman wasn't independently wealthy, she basically had to go work on the street to make ends meet, or something like that. That's just how society was set up, and thank goodness we've moved beyond that. And so like she's over there. So what they did is if someone was married to a woman and he died, they had a succession of what would happen to her, so that someone go, well, I don't want her. It's law that she would be protected, right? And then so the Sadducees are like, it's protection all the way down to, and then they're worried about like, well, then in the resurrection, Jesus is like, push up your glasses, and like in the resurrection, Jesus, like whose wife is she? Like that's which
also shows, they are so sad, you see, because they don't believe in the resurrection. Yeah. But it also shows that they do not understand the kingdom of God.
Yes. Well, and and I think this shows us something that we miss a lot. That I think we try to figure out every little situation. And And maybe in trying to figure out every little situation, do we take off the wedding garment?
It reminds me of Psalm 139, where he talks about hemming us in. And a lot of people want to think of, oh, God is hemming me in. He's restricting my life, when he's seeking best for us if we will just choose to live within that best, that hemming in. I mean, we have horses, they're in a pasture for their protection. So do you live life understanding that he's sovereign and that he wants best for me? And if I seek that, then there's where best follows.
Perhaps I'm speaking against my own. This is not an honest pursuit of information or knowledge. This is very lawyerly. Because and the iteration upon iteration upon iteration, the loophole is supposed to snare them. And they don't know what to do when he's not snared.
It's not snareable.
I would say sorry about it.
So,
very people looking guy.
oh yeah.
Do a black widow. Wow, everything's inside.
Like that's
But you can't use that in the sermon.
I can't use that in the sermon. They that's funny though. That's funny. But I do think like when Mick was talking, they kind of reminded me of that what the Pharisees are doing and what the Sadducees are doing are basically the same thing. You know, they're trying to trap and snare and do it through these like convoluted arguments about and they're almost like trying to bring Jesus into their world and their understanding,
Right.
And all these things.
It's their consistent underestimation. That's their problem. They consistently don't understand with whom they're dealing. When they think all of these legal games, but guess.
Well, and the Sadducees are opposed to the Pharisees, but they're both opposed to Jesus.
They have a common enemy.
They have a common enemy.
And all this also reminds me of well, it's one of my favorite sayings, but like back in the Middle Ages, the monks used to argue about how many angels could dance on the head of a penny, like all that stuff. This kind of reminds me of that situation, and I think Jesus' answer, and I think we could take Jesus' answer in a few not best directions here. Like I think some people think like, oh, we're going to be angels when we die. Like no, that's not what he's saying. I think he's just saying like you don't understand. Like, the argument that you're making is so off the point. I think is what he's saying. It's like I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm talking with someone, no one in this room. Like it's like you're so you're so off of where we are. It's hard to even bring you in type of thing to the argument. It's kind of like you're talking to a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old. We use great-grandchildren of Gloria for an example, right? and you're just having a conversation with other adults about I don't know, maybe trying to find someone who mows the grass well or something like that, trying to find someone like that. And they're like, the grass is itchy on my foot. I think Jesus is saying, it's like, stop thinking the grass is itchy on your foot. You're nowhere near the conversation that we're having. You guys want to fully understand all this stuff. And it's so much bigger. It's so much bigger. You're removing yourselves
But what is that angel's word really?
What?
Messenger?
It's well, it's going to be angelos in Greek. It's going to be angelos. So it's I mean we can look it up. Let's see. You asked the question. I'll look it up. Let's see. So enter here. Matthew 22
30.
30. 1 second, everybody. Let's see here. I won't put it up on the screen. Let's see. Yeah, it's angeloi. It's angels, but so there's multiple translations happening here. Is that I'm pretty sure Jesus is using angels the way that we kind of consider them. It's not exactly because we're 2,000 years removed from Jesus, but the word in the Old Testament for angels is the same word for messengers. So like messengers from God, like because we kind of have this sense of like angels and all that stuff. So like the book of Malachi in the Old Testament, Moloch is the root for his name. That's the same word that it translated angels. Like it's so you got your like that's like a Moloch, like that, like that's so Malachi. So if we translated the book of Malachi, it would say it would be like angels, or the name angel, type of thing. That's what it is. So it's the same. It's angeloi in Greek, and I think Jesus is using that word to help like you guys just think that you're going to be these heavenly beings,
Because by implication, a pastor.
Implication. What it means?
Let's just start.
Oh yeah, messenger. Yeah,
Prophet.
Yeah, prophet, but all that. So and then Jesus actually, it's kind of interesting how Jesus then's like, remember he says that I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He says like he's the God of the living. Like he's like you guys are you're mistaken.
Well, and he's slamming their not believing in the resurrection there too.
Oh yeah. No, he definitely goes right back into that. So then the next one begins with verse 34. And when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they're like, oh no, like these, like that's they want to test him again. And he's like, what's the greatest commandment? And this got me thinking about our old pal Matthew chapter 7. And verse is that in chapter 7? Verse 12. Is it 12? Yeah. Which I think as we're getting deeper into Matthew, I think that is the point. It's what we call the golden rule. And so Matthew chapter 7, verse 12 says, therefore, whatever you want men to do to you, do also for them. This is the summation of the law and the prophets. Like that's like it's like Jesus is like treat people well. Like this is the summation. And then he's like, what's the greatest commandment? Well, I'm gonna quote the John 3:16 of the Old Testament, which is was that one of the readings this last Sunday? Or was it 2 Sundays ago? Deuteronomy chapter 6. It was it 2 Sundays ago?
You're sleeping.
You were sleeping?
Oh, shit.
Yeah, Judah makes me feel good when you say something like that. Hey, there's a place in Deuteronomy.
So are you out in the sun?
Yeah, this hurts. Yeah. There's Lee. You've been having fun with the technology, huh, Lee?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Gene quit already.
like you've been like, sorry about that. Sorry about that. So we are on chapter 22, verse 34 through 40 right now. So that's kind of where we are. And so they ask him, they're trying to trap him once again. So, and again, you see all these people trying to trap. Is that connected to that wedding garment of like not taking it seriously, not like that's, is that also, if I'm thinking about it, is that the
Implication of the devil.
that's in, like that's and the blaspheming the Holy Spirit, like this, it's all the same kind of ideas that are compounding here. And so they ask, like, what's the greatest commandment? And he quotes Deuteronomy chapter 6. And Deuteronomy chapter 6 is the John 3:16 of the Old Testament. It's, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength." Like that's, and then write them on on walls and put them on your forehead. Like,
Heather wrote it.
yeah. Oh, that's right. Heather read it. Yeah. And so like that is, it's the John 3:16 of the Old Testament. So they're like, what's the greatest commandment? And he's like, he quotes that Deuteronomy. He's like, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and all your mind. Now, this is first and the greatest commandment. And the second is just like, it's like, love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. On these two, the commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Like there is a glorious simplicity in that. And it's a glorious simplicity that is not talked about. This is a glorious simplicity that it's not till I was well into my adulthood that I started to realize, like, so I always tried to make much about the law and the prophets. And then here Jesus is twice in Matthew, and I think it's being subtle all through there. It's like, listen, it's like the law and the prophets hang on how you're treating your neighbor. Like loving God as best you can, loving your neighbor. Like that.
I would take, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can I be mom?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, but it I don't think as best you can is what this is saying.
Well, and that's
I'm
always
saying,
the kid in those words.
Yeah. All your heart, all your soul, all your mind. I mean, that's not necessarily easy to achieve, but it is foundational.
And so, and then the loving the neighbor part is the part that
I don't think you can do one without having that other one in place.
Well, and that's the whole Lutheran view of the commandments. Like that when we're breaking the sixth commandment, we're also breaking the first. Like that we are always where they go in tandem. And I think that's why Jesus is saying, like, that second one is just like it. It's love your neighbor, and it's getting used in the same sense as loving God.
And this brought to my mind Corrie ten Boom after she had been in wherever she was. I can't remember the camp. Yeah. But she was speaking years later, and as she was speaking, one of the prison guards was in the audience, and he came up to her, and she was like, I cannot do this on my own. It's only through God that she could reach out to this man. And I mean, that is where God has us.
Mm-hmm.
This very short, succinct reply also repudiates their love for the complexity of law. Just distills everything. They live for the complexity. They've got 600 odd laws to enforce. You're happy as can be. And this guy comes along and says, right down there.
Well, remember one of the parts we were talking about a few weeks back about the disciples search for grandeur and to be the greatest. One of the things where we were dealing with all those kids was the Pharisees wanted to talk to them about divorce. And he basically points out what you just said, is that their wanting of the complexity is allowing them to hurt other people down the way. They're wanting the complexity in this divorce thing is in this pursuit of righteousness that they're able to hurt to not love them, right? That complexity. I think that's a good way of putting it. And what's the other? I keep forgetting what the other word we're using this in the first couple.
The perversion of procedure.
Yeah, the perversion of procedure. That's what we were talking when we first started Matthew. The perversion of procedure, and and we're kind of still there. We're kind of still there in this book. So then you have this last part, and this should I think we are removed enough from Jewishness roots of the original hearers of Matthew to not get upset at this next little section. I think we're removed enough from that. But as we go into it, you have to remember how big of a deal David is and was. King David. Like how big of a deal. Like he was like that. I mean, like he's going to come in the town of David, the Messiah and all this Messiah languages. And Jesus throws David some shade here that we just need to recognize like that we should be upset at how much shade Jesus is throwing at. So let's kind of go through that. Verse 41 is where we are. And so Pharisees are all gathered, probably murmuring to themselves, right? And Jesus is like, so what do you think about the Christ? Whose son is he? Like that's, he comes right out and says it. And this is also, I think this helps us see in a few places. The Gospel of Mark really did it, but and Matthew still plays with it. But like the whole, like when he says that Jesus is the Son of God, like that's making fun of Caesar. It's making fun of this God that people have a lot of their lives. It's true that he is the Son of God, but it's the Son of God in Roman worlds would have been understood to be like a little Caesar, or like all this stuff going forward. So, and they're like, well, it's going to be the son of David. Like that's a big thing. And then he goes, well, then how then does David in the spirit call him Lord? Like if he's the son of David, if the Messiah, the Christ, Messiah and Christ are the same word. One's just Greek and one's Hebrew. And he's like, if the Messiah, then why does David himself call him his son Lord? And then he quotes, imagine it's a psalm. What does he quote there? Yeah, it's Psalm 110. Yeah. He says, the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand till I make your enemies a footstool. And if David then calls him Lord, how is he his son? Like that's, and no one was able to answer him, and they didn't dare ask him any more questions. like that's finally small. Yeah. And so I don't know, what do people think? Is they were having fun? No one?
I think he's telling them who he is.
Okay.
And they know he's telling them who he is. And that's why they're not asking the question anymore.
Yeah. Like so he is being forthright with them, and is like, no, David's underneath me. Yeah. That's a good perspective. That's good.
I haven't been on with you guys that you're doing this. So
you're coming in cold.
I'm coming in cold.
Yeah.
So when he says what do you think about the Christ? Whose son is he? He has already identified himself as Christ, right?
Let's see. Do I remember in Matthew? Has he? I think he has.
And he's the Son of Man.
Like that's, well, he had the transfiguration already.
Okay.
Yeah, he had the transfiguration already. And there's been a couple other places.
When the judge was talking to him,
This is my son.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like I was pretty sure, but like
Yeah, I'm glad you were struggling with it a little bit there too.
Yeah. Like the transfiguration has already happened. That's the big one.
Okay.
That's the big one. Now, and so we know, at least in this story, some of the disciples is, but also, we know that James and John, at least we knew through their testimony, they felt that way about Jesus.
Well, and I guess my question would be better clarified. Has he identified himself as Christ to the Sadducees and the Pharisees?
Well, I'm sure the news is, well, remember also people have gone into Jerusalem now to all the shouts of save us, shouts of Hosanna.
Okay. I got you.
All those things
so that would be clear.
And so all these people, and they're expecting him to come and take the throne of David. They're expecting him to come in. Yeah, they're expecting him to liberate them from their oppressors, to do all this. And what's fun about this is that as I fast forward here for just a second, I want to. Does Barabbas play a big deal in Matthew? I can't remember if he's. Yeah. So basically there's this handoff that happens in Matthew. I was trying to make sure Matthew was the one who does this. That this handoff of they want earthly power so much. So everyone's yelling for like save us. The same call for the last time a descendant of David, Scott and Judas Maccabeus, which that's the advent of Hanukkah. And their same cries as he liberated them from Alexander the Great, and 100 years before Jesus. And now all these same cries are for Jesus to come and liberate them again. And yet they all kind of find out, because I think partly because of this talk, that of everything that's going on here, that he's not actually going to liberate them from Rome like they want him to. They want an earthly king and all that stuff. And they're like, oh, he's not going to do it. Well, give us this guy that will. Give us Barabbas. Give us this guy. So we're getting there. But you could see how Matthew, the storyteller, as he's putting together the story, putting all these storylines together as we're working towards the end.
The misunderstanding, interesting, is shared both by disciples and by the Pharisees.
Yeah.
They both think this guy is trouble.
Yeah.
Or this guy is potential power.
Yeah.
Again, the apostles are confused, and these folks are facing your entire persecution. This guy is people.
Yeah.
And if I was a Pharisee back then,
Word.
I don't think you fully qualified.
Yeah.
There'll be so much more understanding.
You're female.
But would I have condemned him? I mean, like Paul. Paul was so zealous for the law, and he honestly thought he was doing the will of God.
Don't make excuses. They're not ignorant. They're mean. They're calculating.
But God took that and used it. He used that quality in Paul, that same tenacity that Paul persecuted the Christians. God took and created for him. I mean, Paul said, I bear the brand marks of Jesus in my body.
So I will say some fresh heresy here to make everyone feel uncomfortable about everything that we end. But I think the way the Gospels are written, and the way that we're kind of supposed to pick a side, and I think we see everyone as disappointed. That like nothing, like the people have abandoned them, the Pharisees have abandoned them, disciples have abandoned them. And I think as we're reading this, we have enough. We're so committed over the story, we don't really read it like that anymore. But we get over there, and it's like, and I think what Mom is saying is actually, it's like, would I have cried for Barabbas? Would I have been so angry with them? Would I have wanted power like the disciples? Like over there, and you see that through that disappointment is how God saved the world. That what was impossible for man is possible with God. All these things, and I think that's an interesting way of looking, because it's an evaporation of our own self-righteousness.
Would I have felt like I needed to defend God instead of follow God?
Yeah. And so to look at all these stories today and to go back to all these things, I think that's where it's encouraging us to be. It's like, are we so interested in the procedure, we begin to worship the procedure of the law, rather than being able to take on the yoke, the light yoke? Because there's a lot of people that even want to turn like all the good news stuff and we've all been part of churches like that. Like, this is good news, you need to obey, blah, 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 blah.
They miss the grace.
And they miss the grace part. And so yeah. Anyway, we're gone a little long. So, but this was a heavy chapter. This is a heavy chapter. And so for everyone watching pre-recorded on YouTube, thanks for joining us.